an ancient warrior people from the outer rim planet of Mandalore. Much of Mandalorian culture revolved around battle, living by a strict code of honor, encouraging them to settle disputes and choose leaders through single combat. For much of their history, stemming back before even the formation of the Old Republic, Mandalorian warriors sought battle primarily for experience and glory, with reward and conquest as secondary concerns. Earning an elite reputation, they rode beasts like the Great Mythosaur and earned individual fame as bounty hunters and mercenaries. Unfortunately, due to the very nature of their aggressive society, disputes and rivalries were often settled through war, leaving their people divided, with only the greatest of warriors able to claim the mantle of Mandalore and unite the clans. During the age of the Old Republic, a faction of Mandalorian crusaders launched a war of conquest, capturing worlds like Cronus and conquered Dawn, while devastating planets like Abduria. At some point during this period, Mandalorian rally masters led warriors into battle wearing distinctive red armor. Expanding beyond their homeworld, they grew their ranks by accepting anyone of any background, on the condition they lived by the Mandalorian creed. Eventually, their wars led them into conflict with the Old Republic, who were protected by the Jedi Order, an organization of Force-sensitive, lightsaber-wielding warrior monks, possessing numerous natural advantages like enhanced reflexes, strength, speed, and foresight. Though Mandalorians fought bravely, they were soundly defeated, which in turn only made them more determined to seek victory. Adapting to this new threat, they changed everything from their fighting style to weapons and armor, leading to an age of technological advancement. This resulted in Mandalorian warriors using specialized weapons, jetpacks, magnetized boots, tactical displays in their helmets, and armor forged of Beskar, a unique type of metal strong enough to withstand the burning blade of a lightsaber. With these tools at their disposal, Mandalorians at last started to emerge victorious in some of their confrontations with the Jedi, greatly increasing their already legendary reputation throughout the galaxy. Following leaders like Mandalore the Great, they engaged in the Mandalorian Jedi Wars, but in the end could not stand against the might of the Order and Republic, retreating into their own space. Despite their defeat, the wars fought over thousands of years earned them a permanent reputation as some of the greatest warriors in the galaxy, with even the High Council respecting their skills and accepting Tar Vizsla into the Order as the first Mandalorian child to be trained as a Jedi. Following his own path, Tar Vizsla created a unique lightsaber called the Darksaber and took it with him when he returned to Mandalore and became their ruler. Yet upon his death, the weapon was recovered by the Jedi Order. As relations between the Republic and Mandalore once again turned hostile, Clan Vizsla sought to recover the Darksaber of their ancestor, and so stole it from the Jedi Temple, after which it became an inspirational symbol used to conquer the other clans and unite their people. Ever eager for glory, they once again went to war with the Jedi in the final centuries of the Old Republic, and were once again defeated, leaving their home planet a ruined desert. Utterly devastated, many Mandalorians laid down their arms and dedicated themselves to the reconstruction of their world, while others left to populate colony planets. Over the next 1,000 years, most Mandalorians turned away from their ancient traditions, remaining in relative isolation from the rest of the galaxy as they recovered from the damage inflicted upon their civilization. Yet in time, this pacification of a once mighty warrior people created a counterculture eager for change and a return to their glorious past. In 42 BBY, tensions at last erupted into a civil war, ending in further devastation to their planet and the fracturing of their people into 3 factions. The winners of this conflict were the new Mandalorians, led by Duchess Satine Kryze, a brilliant and effective leader who established a ruling council, administered reconstruction efforts, and returned them to relative prosperity by joining the Galactic Republic. A far cry from their ancient past, their new leader was also a pacifist, turning away from violence after witnessing the horrors of their civil war. Suffering defeat, the warrior class broke into 2 groups, with some exiled to the moon Concordia where they plotted revenge, and others becoming the old Mandalorians by leaving their space to become bounty hunters and mercenaries, with no desire to continue the war. Serving as governor of Concordia, Pre Vizsla turned against Satine and took leadership of the exiles to form Death Watch, a faction dedicated to reviving their warrior past and deposing the pacifist government. Aiding him in this mission was Bo-Katan Kryze, leader of the Night Owls and sister to Satine, who unlike her siblings sided with the warrior class in the conflict. Upon the outbreak of the Clone Wars in 21 BBY, Duchess Satine formed the Council of Neutral Systems, a faction of 1,500 star systems within the Galactic Senate who sought to stay out of the fighting. Yet soon, the war came to them, as Pre Vizsla made his move, allying with the Separatist government to launch terrorist attacks against their homeworld and the Republic presence within their space, in the hopes of provoking the Galactic Senate to send troops to Mandalore. Using the occupation of their planet as a propaganda tool, Pre Vizsla would declare it an invasion and lead Death Watch into repelling their forces, thereby becoming heroes to the people and winning the support necessary to depose Duchess Satine. Although the plan almost worked and the Senate authorized sending troops to occupy Mandalore, the order was rescinded thanks to the efforts of Duchess Satine, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Padme Amidala, who uncovered that the Senate was swayed by false evidence and exposed the truth of the situation. With their plan in shambles, the Separatists withdrew support from Death Watch, leaving Pre Vizsla no choice but to withdraw and flee into exile, creating a base on the planet Karlek, where they once again plotted revenge. Seeking to strike back against the rebel confederacy for their betrayal of Death Watch, Pre Vizsla targeted Count Dooku for assassination. But the plot failed when their alliance with the Separatist Senator Lux Bonteri allowed the Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano to infiltrate their camp and expose their plans. After a brief battle and Ahsoka's escape, Death Watch relocated to the swamp moon Zanbar, where they returned to their primary mission of deposing the pacifist government of Mandalore. Despite suffering a series of setbacks, their fortunes finally turned upon finding the former Sith apprentice Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress unconscious in an escape pod floating through space. Bonding over their shared enemies in the Jedi Order, Death Watch and the aspiring Sith Lords allied together and set about forming the Shadow Collective, a new galactic power supported by Mother Talzin of Dathomir, as well as numerous criminal syndicates like the Hutts, Pikes, and Black Suns. Ready to enact the next part of their plan, Savage invaded Mandalore with a criminal army and took much of the capital city. Having turned away from their martial past, the pacifist government had few soldiers and could not hold back the enemy, leaving the people in a state of panic as the weakness of their leadership was exposed. Yet just as all seemed lost, Pre Vizsla and Death Watch emerged from exile to fight for Mandalore, defeating the invaders, arresting their leadership, and liberating the planet. Becoming heroes to the people, Pre Vizsla arrested Duchess Satine, took control of the government as Mandalore, and restored their allegiance to the warrior creed. When MAUL pointed out that this world would serve as a base for the Shadow Collective to further expand their influence, Pre Vizsla betrayed their alliance and had him arrested. Seeking only to rule Mandalore and restore their ancient traditions, Pre Vizsla and Death Watch kept their greatest enemies imprisoned, while they consolidated power and prepared for the Republic's response to the coup. Yet they badly miscalculated, as the dark side powers of Maul and Savage allowed them to easily break free and defeat the guards, even recruiting another prisoner, former Prime Minister Almec, to join their side, so he might be restored to his position in the government. Rampaging his way through the building, Maul burst into the throne room and challenged Pre Vizsla to a duel for leadership, in keeping with the traditions of the Mandalorian creed. Understanding this was the way of his people, and that only the strongest must rule, Pre Vizsla accepted and put up a valiant struggle, but in the end lost the Darksaber and was beheaded by the former Sith Lord. Witnessing Maul's victory, some Mandalorians knelt to accept him as ruler, but Bo-Katan refused, as he was a non-Mandalorian, and so fled with her followers to form a resistance movement, starting yet another civil war. Seeking revenge against his old rival Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was the former romantic partner of Duchess Satine, Maul allowed her to send out a call for aid, and as expected, the Jedi leapt into action. First, he tried to persuade the Council to intervene, yet they explained that because Satine declared Mandalore a neutral power, and they were not under attack by Separatists, the Senate was unlikely to authorize aid. Refusing to abandon Satine, Obi-Wan continued on his own, journeying to Mandalore, where he infiltrated the capital city, but was ultimately captured, brought to the throne room, and forced to watch Maul kill the woman he loved. Satisfied with the pain he caused in his adversary, Maul spared Obi-Wan and had him imprisoned, only for Satine's sister Bo-Katan to arrive and help him escape as she continued her campaign of rebellion. Trained as a Bay Knight Sith, Darth Maul did his lineage proud by returning from near death to build an empire of his own, yet no amount of success could keep away the terrible truth that their order followed the rule of two, allowing for the existence of only one master and one apprentice. Though he respected everything Maul accomplished, Darth Sidious, Master of the Sith Order, recognized his former apprentice was now a rival for power, and so traveled to Mandalore, where he faced off against the brother Sith Lords in personal combat. Emerging victorious, Sidious killed Savage and captured Maul, imprisoning and torturing him on Stygian Prime. Remembering the debt he owed Maul for freeing him from captivity, Prime Minister Almec remained loyal and sent super commandos to mount a rescue, after which they escaped to Zanbar. Yet this was all part of the Dark Lord's plan, as he wanted Maul to lure Mother Talzin from hiding so she could be destroyed. Reclaiming the Darksaber, Maul and Death Watch were soon attacked by General Grievous and the Separatists, forcing them to flee and regroup on Ord Mantell. Contacting Mother Talzin, she formulated a plan and sent Night Brother reinforcements to help Maul capture Count Dooku and General Grievous, the two greatest servants of Darth Sidious. As they were hoping, the Separatists soon invaded Ord Mantell, allowing Maul to successfully capture both his targets before retreating to a Mandalorian outpost. Tracked by the Jedi and Republic, Death Watch was once again under attack, allowing Grievous to break free while Maul fled to Dathomir with Count Dooku. Once arrived, they spoke to Mother Talzin, who performed a ritual so she might assume control of Dooku's body. Yet as this occurred, they were attacked by Darth Sidious and General Grievous in a great lightsaber battle that ended with Mother Talzin sacrificing her life so Maul might escape. Eliminating his most powerful ally, Sidious no longer considered Maul a threat, and having lost most his men and resources, Maul took control of the Crimson Dawn criminal syndicate and re-established ties with the Pikes and Black Suns before returning to Mandalore, still under the rule of his ally Almec. Nearing the end of the Clone Wars, Maul saw a Force vision in which Darth Sidious became ruler of the galaxy with Anakin Skywalker at his side. Desperate to stop his former master, but knowing he was far too powerful, Maul crafted a plan to lure Anakin Skywalker to Mandalore, hoping to eliminate the Dark Lord's greatest future servant. Although Maul succeeded in provoking his enemies to move against him, with Bo-Katan and her resistance joined by a clone army of the Republic, Anakin Skywalker did not arrive, instead replaced by his former apprentice Ahsoka Tano. Disappointed, the former Sith explained what he knew of Sidious and the fall of Anakin to the dark side, hoping she might join his crusade, but Ahsoka refused to believe it, resulting in a battle which ultimately left Maul defeated and captured. Elsewhere on the planet, the Mandalorian resistance emerged victorious against Death Watch, allowing Bo-Katan to rule as Mandalore. Yet as the Clone Wars came to an end, Maul's vision came true, and Darth Sidious activated the inhibitor chips within their soldiers to turn against and wipe out the Jedi through Order 66. Taking his place as Sith apprentice, Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, joining Sidious as he converted the Republic into a galactic empire. Refusing to bow to this new leader, Bo-Katan was ousted from power and replaced by Maul's former servant, Gar Saxon, who pledged his loyalty to the Emperor. Once more, Bo-Katan fled into exile, where she remained for 2 decades until at last gathering new allies for yet another civil war. One of the few warrior factions operating during the years of Mandalorian pacifism, the Protectors acted as royal guards for Duchess Satine until her death and the fall of her government. Under the leadership of Fen Rao, they allied with the Empire after the Clone Wars and were granted control of the conquered Dawn system. Respected warriors, the Protectors were brought on by the Republic to train clone soldiers, with Fen Rao serving alongside Jedi in conflicts like the Third Battle of Megiddo. When the war ended, they survived by remaining loyal to the government as it transitioned into an empire, but now they faced problems at home as Fen Rao's enemy Gar Saxon became Imperial Viceroy of Mandalore. Learning that the Protectors were allowing rebel ships through their space unchallenged, Saxon saw the chance to strike and ordered the entire clan massacred, though Fen Rao survived as he was being held by the rebel cell of Kanan Jarrus and Hera Syndulla. Though he initially blamed his captors for preventing him from being with his people, Fen eventually joined the rebellion, seeking vengeance against Gar Saxon and the Empire. As fate would have it, Fen went on to serve as an advisor for young Sabine Wren, another Mandalorian member of the ghost ship Rebel Cell, when she discovered the Darksaber during a mission on Dathomir. Having long since abandoned his claim to Mandalore, Maul became obsessed with seeking vengeance against Obi-Wan Kenobi and merely saw the weapon as a trophy, eventually leaving it abandoned in his pursuit of the enemy. Explaining the history of the weapon and its significance to their people, FETT asked Sabine to claim the Darksaber and become Mandalore, uniting their people in opposition to Gar Saxon and the Empire. Encouraged by her rebel comrades who sought an alliance with Mandalore, the Jedi Canon and his Padawan Ezra trained her in lightsaber combat before they traveled to Cronist, seeking support from the rest of Clan Wren. Under the rule of Sabine's mother, Ursa Wren, former comrade of Bo-Katan, Clan Wren survived by pledging themselves to the Empire, and so refused Sabine's call to action, instead contacting Gar Saxon to come arrest the rebels. Unfortunately, Ursa felt this was necessary to save her clan and daughter, as Sabine was hated by many Mandalorians due to her time as a student in the Imperial Academy, where she designed a weapon specifically targeting Mandalorian armor. Though she destroyed the plans before they could be used to full effect, Clan Wren's reputation was destroyed, and thus were unlikely to be accepted as unifying leaders, even with the Darksaber. Therefore, Ursa made a deal with Saxon, handing over the rebels as well as the Darksaber in exchange for pardoning Sabine. But Saxon ultimately betrayed their deal, declaring all of Clan Wren guilty before leading an army to exterminate their people. Aided by the rebels, Clan Wren emerged victorious, with Sabine defeating Gar Saxon in single combat and taking back the Darksaber. Though she chose to spare his life and refused the title of Mandalore, Sabine vowed she would find the one worthy of that honor. Knowing Saxon was too dangerous to live, Ursa Wren executed him when her daughter refused and renounced her allegiance to the Empire, starting another civil war. Focusing all of their attention on this conflict, Clan Wren did not join the larger rebel movement, but parted on amiable terms, with Sabine and Fen Rao remaining behind to fight for Mandalore. Gathering an alliance to oppose Imperial rule, Clan Wren was joined by Bo-Katan and the Night Owls, Clan Kryze, Clan Vizsla, Clan Rook, and Clan Elder, eventually killing Gar's brother Tibur Saxon, and taking control of the homeworld, where Sabine presented Bo-Katan with the Darksaber, allowing her to reclaim the title of Mandalore. Yet once again, her reign was fated for tragedy, as the end of the Galactic Civil War saw the Empire order a great purge on Mandalore, devastating the planet and population. Though Bo-Katan survived the battle, she lost everything, including the Darksaber, which came into the possession of Moff Gideon, a ruthless yet cunning Imperial loyalist. Fleeing into exile, Bo-Katan refused to accept defeat, determined to unify whatever Mandalorians remained so they might retake their homeworld and re-establish their society. In order to legitimize her authority after so many failures, Bo-Katan planned to honor ancient traditions by personally defeating Moff Gideon to reclaim the Darksaber. Having lost most of those in their home system, the legacy of Mandalore was carried on by the survivors, which included those operating outside their space during the Purge and hunt for their kind. Breaking away from the rest of Mandalorian society, the Children of the Watch were a radical warrior faction dedicated to the way of the Mandalore, an honor code based on the ancient traditions of their people. Seeking a return to the harsh warrior culture of their storied past, the creed they followed was far more strict and uncompromising than Death Watch or any of the other warrior factions. Among the rules they upheld, their people settled disputes through single combat, yet were loyal to the clan above all else, and never removed their masks in front of others. As the rest of Mandalorian society became inwardly focused, remaining on the worlds within their space, many came to see them as a race of people from a certain region of the galaxy, yet the Children of the Watch took the opposite approach, looking beyond their space to embrace the idea anyone could become a Mandalorian so long as they followed the creed, rescuing and adopting children called foundlings to train in the way of the Mandalore. Despite surviving the Great Purge, their people were deeply affected by the fall of their homeworld, becoming high-value targets for the Empire, sending them into hiding in the Outer Rim. After the defeat of the Empire, the danger of being targeted by the Imperial Remnant remained, and so many survivors continued to hide, with some like the Children of the Watch tribe on Nevarro, allowing only one of their people outside the sanctuary at a time. Taking work as mercenaries, this clan soon made more enemies when the Mandalorian Din Djarin broke a contract provided through the Bounty Hunters Guild by refusing to deliver a Force-sensitive child to the Imperial Remnant. Adopting the boy as a foundling, the way of the Mandalore demanded Din protect the child, leading him to a shootout with the Bounty Hunters Guild as they sought to repair their damaged reputation. On the verge of defeat, Din and the Foundling were saved by the rest of the tribe, who broke their rules of secrecy by emerging all at once in order to uphold the ancient way by defending their people no matter the cost. Despite their victory against the guild, they were targeted by the Imperial Remnant, which sent an army to wipe them all out. One of the few to survive and flee the planet, Din Djarin was given a new sigil and special mission by the clan armorer, tasked with returning the Force-sensitive child to the fabled Jedi of ancient legends. Making a number of enemies along the way, including Moff Gideon, who desperately pursued the powerful child for research and experimentation. The Mandalorian and his ward also made a number of allies, including Bo-Katan Kryze, who taught him some of the history of their people to explain how she and her comrades could be Mandalorians without following the way of the Mandalore. Having been sheltered from what went on beyond the tribe, Din was shocked to learn he was raised by an extremist faction, and in time started to lessen his strict adherence to the code, even removing his helmet when absolutely necessary. Gathering warriors and supplies to win back Mandalore, Bo-Katan tried to recruit Din, but his only priority was the child, and so he continued on until finding the former Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Yet she refused to train the child, who she revealed was named Grogu, after sensing his attachment to the Mandalorian, fearing it would ultimately lead him to the dark side, as it did for her master Anakin Skywalker. Remaining determined to find someone for the boy's training, Ahsoka directed Din to the planet Tython, where a ritual sent a force signal into the galaxy to attract the attention of a Jedi. Unfortunately, they were then found by the Empire, which distracted the Mandalorian and captured Grogu after the ritual completed. Mounting a rescue mission, Din Djarin was joined by his allies, the warrior Cara Dune, the assassin Fennec Shand, the Night Owls Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves, and the famous bounty hunter Boba Fett, wearing his own Mandalorian armor. Though Boba was not a Mandalorian, he was fiercely protective of the armor left to him by his father Jango Fett, a foundling from Conquered Dawn who fought in the Mandalorian Civil War. Considered by some to be the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy, Jango was hired by Count Dooku to help accomplish the goals of his Sith master Darth Sidious. Taking advantage of his martial prowess, Jango Fett became the human template used by the Kaminoans to clone a great army for the Republic, making his appearance and voice famous throughout the galaxy. As part of the payment he demanded, Jango had a special clone created with no alterations to raise as a son. Naming him Boba and training him as a bounty hunter, the boy started accompanying his father on missions at a young age, and thus was present when his father fought for the Separatists during the First Battle of Geonosis. Watching proudly from a relatively safe distance, Boba's joy turned to horror when Jango was beheaded by Mace Windu, instilling in him a deep hatred for the Jedi Order. Recovering his father's Mandalorian armor, Boba followed in his footsteps by becoming a famed bounty hunter, even earning the same reputation as best in the galaxy. Also like his father, he eventually came to work for the Sith, under the Dark Lord's new apprentice Darth Vader. Yet his fall from glory came during his service to the crime lord Jabba the Hutt, facing off against the Jedi Luke Skywalker and his allies on Tatooine. Falling into a deadly Sarlacc pit, Boba Fett was thought to be dead, but actually survived the encounter, remaining in seclusion for years as he searched for his lost armor. Though the gear survived the Sarlacc, it ended up in the possession of a local, who later gave it as payment to the Mandalorian Din Djarin. Tracking him down, the armor was returned to Boba Fett, and the two became allies, working together to rescue Grogu. With Boba Fett providing a distraction, the others boarded Moff Gideon's ship and split up, with most taking the bridge, while Din went to search for the child. Unfortunately, Moff Gideon anticipated this action and was waiting with Grogu, where he attacked the Mandalorian with the Darksaber. Engaging in single combat, Din emerged victorious, capturing Gideon, taking the Darksaber, and rescuing the child. Yet when he reached the bridge, his lack of knowledge concerning mainstream Mandalorian culture betrayed him, learning that Bo-Katan could only claim the Darksaber and title of Mandalore if she won the weapon in personal combat. Since Din defeated Gideon, the Darksaber was his, and even were he to offer it to her freely, Bo-Katan could not accept. Therefore, in order for her to claim the Darksaber, she would have to fight Din in honorable combat. Yet before the issue could be decided, Moff Gideon's elite Dark Troopers made their way to the bridge, threatening to kill them all, only for the immensely powerful Jedi Master Luke Skywalker to arrive on his X-Wing, destroying the entire platoon on his own. Greeting the Mandalorian, he came to take Grogu for training, and so Din said a heartfelt goodbye before handing him over. With their Jedi business concluded and Moff Gideon in custody, it fell to Din Djarin and Bo-Katan Kryze to settle the issue of leadership for the Mandalorian people. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Soul Guide Medical, Sir Jeremiah Ironside of House Cumcia, Sir Dayron of House Ashford, and Knight of Iron and Ice Fred Heartless. If you'd like to help the channel, please go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can get early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.